What's happening, everybody? I got some exciting stuff this evening. We've got some cool little things that we're going to open up that are going to help us do our color correction in Davinci Resolve. So we're going to go out to the full camera here. There we go. And I'm going to show you what I got. So I got 3 boxes here that we're going to go through. I'm just going to open them one at a time. We'll start with this one. One of the things that I realized once I got into Resolve is that the original 6K RAW footage is, pretty demanding on the timeline. And what's interesting is a lot of stuff seems to be set up for 4K really well. Like, I think this computer is supposed to play multiple streams of 4K in Final Cut, no problem. But even when converted to ProRes in 6K, Final Cut did not like that. And there was no 6K timeline for it in Final Cut. There was like a 4K timeline, and then you're dropping the 6K footage in, and it's shrinking it down, so it's like trying to shrink it on the fly, and he just never really did like it very much. So, there are... obviously 4K is kind of the standard now. A lot more 8K stuff is coming out. I don't know if that's really going to become a standard anytime soon. The visible difference for most people between 4K and 8K is 0. You can't tell a difference at all. So 8K is primarily being used for acquisition to get a nice high resolution detailed, But if you go into Final Cut or Resolve or whatever, there's all kinds of presets for 4K and 8K, nothing for 6K, even though the camera by default shoots in 6K, which again is to get that extra resolution for a 4K master. So I think some of it is just, it's a weird resolution that doesn't mathematically easily, convert. But what I noticed in Resolve is if I turn off, there's a switch in the viewer where you can turn off all of your color grading that you've done and just show the raw file, like the camera file. I can't play smoothly even doing that. It chugs along. It's just slow enough. It's like 22, 23 frames per second instead of a nice smooth 24. And I thought, well, that ought not be. But then I realized all of my hard drives that I have are just standard consumer grade hard drives. They're just 5400 RPM, Seagates. And so, so I think this is a good time for me to talk about how I use hard drives. And so here's a good example right here. So this is, here's some hard drives that I bought. Will there be any difference if you use, say, 4K, 8K footage and a 2K timeline and upscale it afterward, though? So you're saying if I shot 4K or 8K but mastered in 2K and then blew up the 2K later to 4K? 2K is almost HD. It's not much better than HD. If you think HD is 1920 by 1080, and 1920 is almost 2000. So 2K is 2160 by whatever. So it's just a little bit better than HD. The visible difference is negligible. I think that I definitely can tell the difference between HD and 4K. My parents, can they tell the difference between HD and 4K? I don't know, maybe not. If I showed them side by side, they'd probably go, oh, this one looks sharper, clearer, But they're not going to see a difference between 4K and 8K. So as far as like upscaling and all that kind of stuff, I'll be honest, I don't really know how all this stuff turns out when you're converting one thing to the other. But what I'm doing for my film is I've shot in 6K, because that was the maximum resolution and the native resolution of my camera. And I'm mastering in 4K flat, which is 1:8:5:1, which is standard widescreen movie format. And so it's actually a little bit different dimensions than the chip, than the actual footage that I recorded. So it's actually cropping a little bit off the sides, I guess. So it's cropping a little bit off of the image. But it's still very close to to what we filmed. What we filmed was like sort of a true 16:9, which is 1.78 to 1. movie theaters are 1.85 to 1. So the difference is negligible. But I'm just finishing everything in flat and just letting that sort of be it. So so let me talk about my hard drives for a minute. So I've got here's sort of how I do my hard drives for like my freelance projects. This is just a Seagate 5 terabyte. Like I get it on Amazon. Super cheap. It's not that expensive. They're bus powered, so they're good portable drives. These drives really originally and really still were not meant for everyday use. In fact, these type of drives, there was one that was called the Passport, and the idea was it was for moving files from one computer to another. And so ideally you would have some other more robust, like plug in the wall, hard drive where you're actually storing things, and that these are just sort of meant for being mobile or for moving stuff around. But my projects generally are so short-lived that they work for me, at a project level. And so what I do whenever I have a new project that I bid, one of the things that I include in my bid is enough budget for the hard drives. Am I a data wrangler in most projects? So most projects, it's pretty much just me. I have my buddy Noah that helps me, and it's usually the two of us that go out and do everything. So even my feature film. So I've got an hour and 48-minute feature film, and we shot it out of the back of my station wagon, and it was me and Noah and our PA, Caitlin. And for our 18 days of principal photography, that was the crew most of the days. We had a couple of other people that came and helped out a few days, some film students that would come for a couple hours or something like that. It was great to have other help on set. We had an art director that helped with some of those things, helped on one of the overnight shoots. But primarily it was me and Noah making the whole thing. And so I wrote it, I produced it, I directed it, I shot it, I edited it. I'm doing the sound design, I'm doing the color grading. Only major thing that I'm not doing is the score. I'm pretty hands-on about it, but I'm not enough of a musician to actually write the music. So yeah, it's a one-man show, one-person show, and my freelance stuff is even more that way. Noah helps me on everything that he's available for. I used to have an editor, but I got a full-time job working for my church many years ago, and I took my editor with me, and then when I left to go freelance again, he's got a wife and a kid and a mortgage, and so he stayed because it was a pretty steady gig, and I was not yet ready to provide him with any steady payment. So now I'm back to editing everything myself, which has been I would pull my hair out if I had any. But anyway, so I get these hard drives, I get these Seagate drives, and I always get 2. And again, that's in the budget for the projects that I bid for. So anytime I buy a hard drive, I buy 2. And then I use a program called ChronoSync. And ChronoSync, I think now it's about $50, but you buy it once and it's like lifetime updates. At least that's what it was when I bought it. I think it was like $40 when I bought it. And it functions, if you're familiar with Time Machine on a Macintosh, it functions largely in that way. So Time Machine on a Macintosh, you have an external drive that is your Time Machine drive, and it backs up your system drive, every hour or whatever, and anything you delete, it has like an archive folder, so it's not like fully deleted until 180 days or whatever your settings are, And so it functions kind of that way, except it's not just your system drive. It'll do any drive, any folder. You can even set up virtual drives with like network stuff if you're using like Amazon AWS, or if you want to set it up with like a Dropbox folder or something like that. And so what I do is I just set up the initial folders on my first drive, so there's not even really, I format them both, I name them, and then so this company that I did stuff for is called ECMO Advantage, and so on this ECMO Advantage drive, I set up my folder structure that I typically start out with. So I just have some empty folders in there, and then I plug in ECMO Advantage Backup, and I just write it right on there, and then I have ChronoSync sync them back and forth, and sometimes I'll just call them ECMO 1, ECMO 2 instead of the name and then the backup, because ChronoSync can actually back up in either direction. And so if I grab this one and go to the coffee shop and work, and then come home and sync them, and then later I grab this one and go to the coffee shop and work and come back and sync them, doesn't matter. I can as long as they're in sync, I can grab either one, go work, and I come back, and it'll put all the information on both. Keeps them both synced with each other. So that's generally how I have them set up. These are 5 terabyte. So to give you an idea of 5 terabytes, my whole hour and 48-minute movie in Final Cut Pro, I made proxies of everything. So all the raw footage is like 10 terabytes. But the proxy footage was like a terabyte and a half or something. It was super small because it was low res and it was a smaller resolution, and it was also highly compressed. So it all fit in like a terabyte and a half. So I had less than half of one of these drives full. I edited my entire movie. Well, it transcodes it. It does transcode it, but it's done internally in the software program. So that's what a proxy is. So you can go into Final Cut and you select your stuff and you say make proxies, or actually I have it set to immediately make proxies as soon as I import footage. So in the background, it's crunching away, making proxies. And so it takes your like in Final Cut's case, it takes your 6K ProRes footage and makes like a HD size MP4 out of it. So it takes a 30 gig file and makes a 300 meg file out of it. So I was able to put everything that I needed for the movie on one of these 5 terabyte drives. It doesn't have to plug into the wall, just is powered right off the laptop. I pretty much edited the whole movie like at coffee shops because I could just pick it up and go, no problem. And then I could come home and I could switch from proxies to the original footage. And because Final Cut knows which is which, it just flips it over, and all of a sudden I'm looking at the full res footage in Final Cut. Davinci Resolve has the same feature. I didn't edit in Resolve, so I didn't make any proxies in Resolve because you don't want to use proxies to do any color correction. You want to use your original raw footage. So I'm back at home using my plugged into the wall hard drives and that sort of thing. So anyway, using ChronoSync to keep my hard drives backed up, what that meant is I no longer had to spend a ton of money on hard drives, because one of the reasons you spend a lot of money on hard drives is you want them to be secure. That was in the past. That was my biggest reason was, I don't want to lose this data, so I need to get a nice solid hard drive. And so I'd spend a little extra money for a LaCie Rugged or like a quality brand name or something like that. But the fact of the matter is, every hard drive will fail. Every one. All of them, every single one, 100%. On a long enough timeline, every hard drive will eventually fail. It's a fact. So it doesn't matter the brand, and even great brands, will manufacture a lemon from time to time because there's just a flaw in the manufacturing process or whatever. So you just never know what you're going to get. And if you only have one copy of something, you've lost it already. It's just a fact. So I keep at least 2. If it's a big project, what I'll do lots of times is I'll get 3 of these, and I'll keep one off-site somewhere. I'll either let Noah hold on to it, or I'll take it to my parents' house, which is in a different county. It's at the other end of the state. Or I will, for my film, I think one of my drives that has all of our raw camera footage on it, I have a safety deposit box at the bank. I took it there because I was like, I do not want to lose any of this stuff. So anyway, this empowered me to buy cheaper drives because I wasn't so worried about if the drive would fail or not, because I always have everything backed up. And it's not 100% foolproof. Nothing is. But if my worry was, if this drive goes down, I lose everything, so I need a really good drive. Now I can spend almost the same amount of money just on 2 drives, and it's not a big deal. If one starts to fail or goes glitchy or whatever, I can order another one off Amazon. It'll get here sometimes in 24 hours or less, and I just plug it in, ChronoSync matches it up, and I'm back off and running. So ChronoSync and matching hard drives is the way to go. So because of that, I've primarily just bought 5400 RPM drives because that has pretty much served my purposes. That is just fine. As long as they're USB 3 drives, that is just fine for HD footage, which is primarily what I had been working with, a lot of my freelance projects. It's a lot of nonprofits and web videos and stuff like that. Not really any reason to go full 4K with those. But now I'm dealing with this 6K footage, and I think one of the bottlenecks is the speed of my drive. So historically, you always got 7200 RPM drives when you were dealing with video footage. Now all the codecs and stuff are better. USB 3 is much faster. The computers are much faster. The GPUs and all that stuff handle the stuff a lot better. There's a lot of hardware encoding and decoding. And so I just really haven't needed a 7200 RPM drive. I don't think I've bought a 7200 RPM drive in over a decade. I mean, it's been a long time since I've bought a 7200 RPM drive. The exception would be the SSD that I bought when we shot the movie. I bought a 4 terabyte external SSD for the camera, so we could just record all day long on one drive without having to change cards or wait for it to offload or anything like that. But with that exception, I don't think I've bought a 7200 RPM drive in a while, and I'm hoping that is the bottleneck in being able to play at least the raw ungraded stuff smoothly in Resolve. We'll find out here in a little bit. So the drive that I saw that I wanted was a SanDisk 12 terabyte 7200 drive. It had good reviews, price was reasonable, and one of the big things for me is I've got a MacBook Air. I have 2 USB-C ports. That is it. And they are currently both being used. I've got a USB-C hub in one that is breaking out to some other things. The other one has a USB-C to HDMI cable, which is going to my audio receiver and then to my second monitor. And so the reason I chose this particular model of hard drive is because on the back, it's got a daisy chain for Thunderbolt 3. I think it's Thunderbolt 3, not 4, but I think it's 3, which is fine. It's plenty speed-wise. So my hope is, and I don't really know if this is going to work. We'll find out when I get it hooked up. But my hope is that I can take what's going out to my sound and my monitor, that I can plug this drive in before that, and then daisy chain those things. But we'll see. I've always found, like with FireWire and USB, like all this daisy chaining stuff, what I have found is that daisy chaining is possible, but then there's a whole bunch of things that really like to be the first thing in the chain. And they don't really like to be not the first thing in the chain, which for me is kind of like, what's the point of having daisy chaining if nobody wants to be second, So I was going to get this on B&H because B&H had, as always, a great price for it. I love B&H. I love buying things on B&H. B&H, their website is always top-notch. Their customer service is just world class. I mean, it's such a great website, such a great company. But right before I bought it, I was like, let me just see what they have on Amazon. And I did something that I've never done, which is buy a used hard drive. So you're probably asking, now wait a minute, I thought the whole point of buying this drive was it's so important for your movie, that your baby. Why would you buy a used hard drive? Well, here's the reason why. I really only need it for the speed. I already have the files that I need on a drive, and I have that drive backed up, and then I have like backups of that backup in another place, right? I've got it everywhere. So I really only need this for the speed. So I did not buy 2 of these. I just bought one because it's going to be a copy of the slower drive. It's going to be just an exact copy and stay synced up with it with ChronoSync. And so should it die or whatever, then I'll just be, I'll be out the money. I'll be out the hard drive, but I won't be losing footage. So I didn't need to buy 2 of these, and I felt okay buying a used one because it was $200 less. So I was like, because right now I'm like, I need to save the money. So here it is, SanDisk Professional G Drive Project. Apparently very difficult for me to say quickly. And it says that it's used. I mean, the box looks brand new. We'll see what the actual device looks like when we get in there. It's highly likely somebody bought it, opened it, decided it wasn't for them, and sent it back to Amazon or wherever, and they just can't sell it for new. I don't know what the history of this thing was. So the beauty of Amazon is free returns. If it doesn't work, or if the daisy chaining thing, if that's not going to work out for me, just pack it up, send it back, get my money back. So that's nice. That's nice and all. Let's set those right there. And so we're not going to plug this in right now because it's going to disturb my computer setup, but we are going to take a look at it. This isn't even the most fun thing that I got. The Blackmagic board is what we're really all here for. Okay. Oh, there we go. So just looking at the cables, I mean, honestly, they look kind of how they would fresh out of the box. That's why I say it's highly likely this. I don't even know if this thing was even used. You know, who knows if it was even ever plugged in. I'm sure it was probably plugged in, formatted, but anyway, all the little warranty papers and everything are in here. So far, like new. Let's look at the actual drive. Drive still has the support, still has the plastic bag around it. So again, if somebody told me that this was absolutely brand spanking new, I wouldn't know. $200 cheaper. So, Lord willing, it won't be a Lord willing, this will be a good experience. Hopefully, I won't regret having saved some money here. So let's open this bag and take a look at the device. SanDisk is it's a very respected name in film and video production as far as media storage and all that. And what's cool about this particular drive, besides having the Thunderbolt daisy chaining on the back, so there's the back of it. Let's see, there we go. So you can see where it plugs into the computer there, and then your peripherals can be plugged in there. It's got the Kensington lock there. You can turn the LED on the front on and off, which is nice because sometimes it can be distracting. But another cool feature of it is this right here. You can buy like little SSDs, little 2 terabyte, 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, 4 terabyte SSDs, the kind of SSDs that I would use with my camera shooting a movie. And you can film with those, and you unplug them, and they go in there like a drive. You just shoot, you put them in there, and then there's, I guess it automatically copies everything over or whatever. I suppose you set that up some kind of way. But yeah, I mean, I gotta say, there's not even like a fingerprint on this. So always check Amazon first, I guess, is the lesson there. So I'm not going to plug this in just now, but excited to get all the footage copied over to this, and then we'll test it out. You know, I'll let it copy overnight, and actually it may take longer than that, but because it's, like I said, it's 10 to 12 terabytes worth of information that needs to be copied over. But hopefully that'll solve a little bit of my playability problem. With the color grade added, it's down to like a couple of frames per second. That's not the hard drive. That's my computer and GPU. Not much I can do about that. I did consider, maybe trying to get a new computer, but they're coming out with some new Macs in October, so I'm just going to kind of wait and see about the new like M4 Macs and what all they're coming out with. So we'll wait to see there. All right, so my next two boxes, I got a small box and a big box. We'll do the small box first. Are from B&H, which, like I just said, I love B&H. Everything about B&H is great. I wish every company, no matter what industry, would study B&H and how they do things. It's just so good. I got a lot of my gear for the film from B&H, and it's so great to be. First of all, they have most of the stuff that they sell. They have a lot of it right there in the Superstore in the New York area, and so there were a lot of times when I wanted something, but I wasn't sure if it was going to work with what I already had. And so I would ask, they have like a little chat box you can call, and I would ask, and they would say, hang on, let me go get it off the shelf and take a look. And they would go get the two things and put them together and be like, oh yeah, these do go together. Or no, why don't you try this other thing instead? But the first thing they always ask whenever you're looking for something, the first thing they say is, what are you trying to do? Because they realize that sometimes people like me get blinders on for trying to fix something in a certain particular way, that they like to back out and say, well, what is it you're trying to do? And then when I tell them, they say, they either help me with the exact thing I'm trying to do, or they might say, have you considered this? And they offer something else that maybe is cheaper or easier or ready-made for this exact issue or whatever. So their customer service is just really great. Also, B&H has what they call a Payboo card, which I think is something that's offered. B&H respected all over the world. So B&H's Payboo card is through some bank. I guess the bank has several of these for different stores. But what the Paybu card does is, usually the way I use it, is it pays the sales tax for you. So you're not getting everything tax exempt, but you don't have to pay the sales tax. The credit card company pays the sales tax because they have the money that they make off the interest rate, which is, pretty high. So people like me who generally try to, pay off the card every month, just sort of treat it like cash. I have the cash for the item, but I get it on the Paybu card. That way I save the sales tax. I live in Tennessee in the United States, and in Tennessee our sales tax is close to 10%. So it's like getting a 10% discount on everything just by using this card instead of using cash. And so typically that's the way that I use it. But another way you can use it is 12 months, no interest. So you just pay the minimums or whatever every month. Now the minimums won't necessarily be enough to pay for the whole item, but that's the only requirement is that you pay the minimums. But then you have 12 months to pay off the balance before you pay any interest. So I thought, okay, well, here's an item. This Blackmagic panel is not something that I would want to drop a bunch of cash for all at once, maybe, but I could put a little bit to it every month. That seems pretty reasonable, and so that's what we're doing. So that's how we're able to do this. So if you like B&H, use B&H, and you don't have the Paybu card, I would never recommend anyone get a credit card. So don't get yourself into trouble. But if it's something that you feel like you'll be able to pay off every month, just use it like cash. I typically don't buy anything on the Paybu card unless I have the cash for it already. Like if it's something that the client's paying for or something like that, Anyway, so first thing that we got here, we've got a couple things. I forgot about this. So this is sort of unrelated to the film, but this is a little Stream Deck Mini. It was actually, I was thinking about getting it, and then right before I decided whether or not I was going to buy it or not, it dropped like $20 in price. So I was like, okay, yeah, we'll grab that. And what this is going to allow me to do is with the OBS software that I live stream with, I'll be able to change scenes very quickly, because lots of times when I'm working, somebody asks a question or something, and I'll have to go over to OBS and find my particular scene and change over to it and then come back. And so with this, I'll just have presets. I can just reach up on the desk and just push a button, and so that should be pretty cool. So that'll make live streaming a little more fun. I'm not a content creator like this. I do, my content creation is the heavy duty stuff. It's the big feature film, narrative film stuff. All the social media new stuff. Like Twitch is very new to me. I don't play video games, so I don't really know much about Twitch, but here I am. All right, next thing in this box is the Datacolor Spider X Pro. And this is for calibrating your display to make sure that your display is rendering the colors correctly, which obviously is very important if you're going to be doing color grading, which is what I'm doing. There's like one slightly cheaper option, the non-pro, I guess, version of this. And then there's other options that are much more expensive. There's like some Calman software that's like $2,000 or something like that. Like I'm not, maybe one day, but not today. But this was pretty affordable, and the monitor that I have is a BenQ PD2700U, and it's actually advertised as a designer's monitor, like meaning for like web designers or graphic designers. It's meant for sort of on-screen design, and it is 100%. It's 100% Rec 709 and RGB calibrated right out of the box, and it has presets for sRGB and Rec 709 and a couple of other things. Rec 709 is the color space typically that we use in video film, like on the computer. So this was 100% calibrated out of the box. It comes with a little sheet that shows the calibration on it, and that was like 5 years ago. So ideally, every 6 months or a year or whatever, you would, or at the beginning of every project, you would pop one of these on and just make sure that it's calibrated and tweaked, that you got your profile set correctly. So I thought if I'm really investing in my color correction, my color grading setup, probably need something like this. So No idea how to use it. Never used anything like this, and maybe this is something that we will look at. Maybe on a live stream. I don't know if that's something. Can I do that while I'm streaming? I guess I can. I don't see why I couldn't. It is hard to find an audience on Twitch compared to YouTube Live. Maybe for long one, I would recommend you start some YouTube. Their algorithm is better for things like this. Well, as it so happens, I am presently streaming both on Twitch and YouTube. This is only the second time I've done that because I had that realization not too long ago, actually, myself. And I was like, I bet probably I would get more people looking for this sort of thing, on YouTube, since Twitch is primarily, like gaming and sort of social chat and things like that. So this is streaming currently on YouTube Live right now, I think. It's supposed to be. So for just the calibration of the monitor, it's just this. I don't know what software, if any, comes with it. So, if I need software that is not in here, then I was trying to see if it says on the box what it comes with. I think it has its own like proprietary, software that comes with it. I think if it's just a piece of hardware with no software, then I guess it'll be going back to B&H. Oh yeah, the Cowman stuff looks great. Obviously, it's what to get, but like I said, a 1-year license for it was like $2,000. So that's out. Can't do that. Not possible. So we'll use this. We'll get real close. And here's the thing. I want it to look great. I want it to look the best that it can. I want it to look great in, in a movie theater. Like our premiere event, at least, I hope is in a theater on a big screen. I would like to maybe do, maybe a week-long run in a couple small theaters or something like that would be nice. I think it's worthy of that. I think the biggest thing will be showing the theaters that there are enough people wanting to see it that they can give up one of their theaters for a week, or they can risk, invest one of their theaters for the week. I got about 6 months to do that because we're hoping for like a spring release. So I want it to look nice for that, for sure. How are most people going to watch this? On their crappy television that they still don't have the settings right on. How most people are going to watch this? On their phone, on their iPad, in the sun, while they're doing laundry or what, what I mean? So it's like, I want it to be good. I want it to be right. But I always have this, because I can get real nitpicky and get real down into the details and all this stuff. And I have to keep, the producer in here has to remind the color grader about the law of diminishing returns. It's like, hey, this is a personal project of mine. This is a story that I wrote. I made this all myself and raised a little bit of money. This was cast and crew was all volunteer. We shot it in 2020. I've been editing it now for 5 years, off and on, between freelance gigs and things, and just really trying to get it finished because this is what I would like to do with my life, Lord willing. But the producer in me has to remind the color grader that sometimes you have to go, that's good enough, and move on to the next thing because we got to get this thing finished. There's on the commentary for a movie called Three Kings, or We Three Kings. It's directed by David O. Russell. It's like set during one of the Gulf Wars. It's got George Clooney and Spike Jonze, and I forget who else is in it. But he was saying that they would start their 12-hour day, filming like an insert shot of like a teacup or something, and they would spend like 2-3 hours lighting it, getting this really beautiful shot. And he said by the afternoon we'd be so behind, we'd be doing major dialogue sequences hanging off the side of a truck with a camera handheld. And he said they called it Gone with the Wind in the morning, Dukes of Hazzard in the afternoon. And that happens all the time with filmmakers because we want to get nitpicky if we have the time, and then we realize we don't have the time. So like even my camera. So I've got a Blackmagic Pocket 6K. Shot the whole thing on that. I really like the color science of the Blackmagic stuff. I think they've done a really good job. I want it to look like film. I want it to have a certain kind of warmth and texture and a certain look in the highlights and the shadows and things. And I think that the Blackmagic color science is pretty good. Is it as good as like the Arri Alexa or Mini Alexa or something like that? No, it isn't. Clearly it isn't. However, an Arri setup would be $100,000, something like that. I maybe have 10, 15 grand in my in my Blackmagic setup. So the question is, yeah, it looks better. Is it 10 times better? Is it 10 times better? Probably not, you know. And so $150 or whatever versus $2,000. Is the 2001 better? Oh, I'm sure it is. Is it 10 times better? I don't know about that. You know, this is going to get me close enough, I think. Would you care to share the log line of this movie? Of course. Oh, and you know, I usually put this in the chat, and I forgot to do it. So you can go to thedarknessrolledoverher.movie, and you can learn more about the film that way. But it's the main character, her name is Gwen, and at the beginning of the film, she's decided to take her own life. But she's got this weekend trip planned, and she thinks this will be a good time to say goodbye to some friends. They don't really know what she's doing. And so the trip is a fly fishing retreat, and she's never been fly fishing. So she gets paired up with this old fly fisherman named Roy, and they spend the day together, and their conversation and their friendship throughout the day starts to sort of challenge her decision. Also on this trip, there's a young woman named Sam, and when Gwen looks at Sam, she thinks, you know, that's where I was at her age, and I don't want her to be where I'm at my age. And that also starts to sort of challenge some of her thinking as well. So I wrote the short story and released it in the spring of 2019, and it really got a good response from the book, just from some friends and people that read the book. And as soon as I was done writing the book, I thought, you know, there's not 3 or 4 people in the story. It's mostly exterior day. It's all present day. No crazy, you know, not too many crazy effects or weird props or, you know, period vehicles or weird wardrobe or anything like that. I have a camera. I have lenses. I have sound equipment. I have lights. I have batteries. You know, it's like, I think we can make this as a movie. And so when the pandemic hit and freelance work kind of dried up and I was sitting around with all this gear, Noah and I were like, let's go outside and make a movie. And so we did it in the fall of 2020, right as in that first dip, after the first big, huge explosion of cases there at the beginning. At a time when we thought, okay, we think this is over now. You know, turns out it wasn't. But it was in that first dip when cases were really low and everybody kind of thought maybe this is ending. And, you know, we were careful and all that, but we were outside all the time, and so we really didn't have any issues with it. Shot the film in 18 days, over a month and a half. So Noah and I talked about turning it into a movie. I mentioned it to him for the first time August 17th, 2020. August 17th, 2020. September 16th, 2020, we had our first day of production. In 29, 30 days, went from, hey, I think we could make a movie of this, to we're on set filming with cast, wardrobe, you know, we spent the money, we got new gear. I mean, it was an insane month. It was. My house still is not recovered. My house still has like empty boxes and gear and crates and stuff everywhere. I don't know where it's all going to go, you know. But it was insane how quickly production went, and then post-production has just taken forever. But anyway, we're getting through it. Okay, so we've got the Stream Deck Mini, we've got the Spider X Pro, and now what we're all here to see, the big box. Here it is. I'm pretty excited about this. I've used Resolve before to do a little bit of color stuff, so I was kind of familiar with it, but I never really got in depth with how to properly use it until, you know, just the last couple of weeks. I've got 2 sources of information that I'm using to learn Resolve. One is a Ripple training series with Mark Spencer and Steve Martin. Not that one, different one. And Steve does one called Core Training, and it is basically how to use Resolve from bringing the media in and editing with it, doing some color, doing some sound, doing some basic effects in Fusion, and then outputting the final thing for delivery. So he kind of walks through the basics of the whole thing. And then Mark Spencer has one called Advanced Color Grading, and he walks through really how to live in the color page and do a lot of the advanced color work. So like I said, I edited the movie in Final Cut Pro because that's just what I'm comfortable with. I like the speed of it. I like the way it works. I like the magnetic timeline. I did my sound design in Logic Pro. And I could have done both of those things in Resolve. I could have edited in Resolve. I could have done the sound design in Fairlight in Resolve, but I didn't. It's just not what I chose. So, but now I'm doing the color and the final delivery in Resolve. I was going to go back to Final Cut, but I'm realizing Resolve is probably the best thing for exporting a DCP output, which is what you need for a DCP projector, which is the kind of projector they have in the cinemas, the movie theater houses. And so I've already been able to make a DCP output of like a clip or whatever, just to make sure I know how that process works, and that's all good. So I'm redoing all my titles and everything in Resolve. So it's great. I shot with the Blackmagic. I come into Resolve. The very first thing was exporting all the clips, basically transcoding each clip out to a ProRes file, which could be used in Final Cut. I cut everything in Final Cut, and then you export a Final Cut XML. You import that into Resolve, and there is your whole edit, almost perfectly preserved, from Final Cut. There's a few things that don't come over quite right, like titles, or if you put a black color behind something or something like that. Some of that stuff you have to kind of go back in and clean up. But all of your footage and everything, all of your sound edits and all that stuff, it's exactly like you had it in Final Cut. It's really great. And then even better, Resolve recognizes that it's coming from raw footage, and it asks you, do you want to go back to the raw footage? And you say, yes, absolutely. And so it takes all your ProRes.movs and swaps them out for the original .braw raw files, and now you're back with your camera raw footage ready to go. So it's pretty fantastic. So now I've got my whole movie in the timeline, and it's all, the camera raw footage that's represented in the timeline, not using any of the ProRes anymore. Yeah, conforming anything can always have problems. Seems like I had to fix maybe a couple of things, but so what I did to make sure that the conform was right was my Picture Lock reference movie, the MP4 that I was using like in Logic Pro to do my audio. That's exported from Final Cut with a timecode burn in. And the time code of the timeline, not the source time code. I had one that had source time code too, but the time code of the timeline. And so then I can just lay that on top of my, Davinci Resolve timeline, and just sort of turn it off and on, and just kind of click on down through the movie, and just make sure everything is lined up pretty good. And so the other thing is the way I edit. Like if you look at a lot of modern video and even cinema movie timelines, they've got 18 tracks of video going and stuff all stacked up and all that. I had primarily one track of video where I'm doing straight cuts, and occasionally I would lay like a little insert shot on a second track, or if I was doing some kind of compositing thing, if I knew I was going to have some compositing going on, then I would just stack those in the timeline. So I have a second track of video that has 10 or 12 clips in it for the whole movie. Pretty much everything is in the one video track timeline. Pretty much everything is straight cuts or dissolve, and all of that came over, really nicely. If I was doing a ton of, quick edits and scaling and all kinds of weird stuff like that, I would suspect there would be a lot more problems, more points of failure. But as far as I know, everything looks pretty good. Hopefully this new hard drive will allow me to play it through in real time to double check. All right, B&H packing slip, bubble mailers, more bubble mailers, more bubble mailers, and there it is, more bubble mailers. Davinci Resolve micro color panel. It's the way this box, the shape of the box, and the fact that it is, excuse me, the shape and size of this box and the fact that it is shrink wrapped reminds me of like when I was a kid at Christmas and we get like a board game or something, and so I'm like definitely feeling like a kid at Christmas anyway. Yeah, well, and it dropped in size too. So for a long time, I was eyeing this one, which used to be like 800 and something, and was like kind of big. It's kind of like a, I don't know if you know what a Commodore 64 is. I had a Commodore 64 growing up, but it was like a keyboard and the CPU of the computer like all in one. And so the $800 one was like a big kind of hefty piece of gear. And then the $2,000 one, 2,000 plus, like $2,200. That's the one kind of everybody wants because it's got the screens on it and it's more fully featured. But it's just so big. Even if I could afford it, which I can't, I wouldn't have room for it on my desk. I don't know what I would have to move around in order to get that to work. But this I can. I still have to shuffle a few things around, but this I can make work. So, all right, let's crack it open. Here we go. Nice. Taking off the shrink wrap is very satisfying. Yes. Yeah, Bluetooth obviously was a big draw as my USB stuff. I may be maxed out on it. I might be able to plug this into my monitor and get it directly USB, but nice to have the options. All right. Comes with this beautiful manual. Here's just the back of it already to kind of just show you. Blackmagic is so good with their documentation. Everything is always very, very clear, very well organized. The PDF manual for Davinci Resolve, the software program, is like 4,000 pages or something. It's crazy, but you can search it. So if you're looking for something, you just type it in the little search window in your PDF app, and it'll find it. All right, styrofoam, and look how cute it is. It's like just a little bit smaller than you think it's gonna be. It's really about the size of in fact, my USB keyboard. Let me unplug it here, so I can hold both of these. So here's my USB keyboard that's got the number pad on it, and it's my USB keyboard is actually wider. Is actually wider than the micro panel. So that's interesting. So that's nice. Ooh, that feels good. There's just a little bit of resistance. Sorry, I see I'm having these dropouts in the feed, so I don't know what that's like on your end, but I think that's a Xfinity thing that I don't think can be fixed. But anyway, these controls, there's just a little bit of resistance to them. I mean, they move very easily, but especially the trackballs, it's not like you can just spin them. It's like it's got, you feel like there's a gear moving under them or something. It's just a little bit of resistance to it, so you can just make those fine things. One of the reasons I felt like I kind of needed this to do the work, I've got a Wacom pen tablet, and it's a multi-touch tablet as well. The multi-touch tablet kind of works like the trackpad on a laptop. It uses multi-finger gestures and things, but it's not exactly the same as using the built-in trackpad. Some of the features don't quite work the way the built-in trackpad does, so that's a little frustrating. But one thing I was noticing is if I'm doing a lot of these little fine controls in Resolve, and I'm I do a 3-finger drag. So if I'm dragging a grab a tool and dragging it down, or I'm moving a wheel or sliding a lever or something like that, and take my finger off, even quickly taking it off, there's just like a little movement or something, or even slowly trying to take it off, there's a little movement. So then I was like, oh, well, I'll use the pen, because the pen is for real precise work, and you can do very precise work with it. But again, for the way these controls are, even lifting the pin was always like just kind of moving things a little bit. So I'm really excited to have these wheels that you move and you can just take your hand off of, and it'll be there. And so I think I'll be able to do this guy. And it's got this slot. It's got this slot for an iPad. So I have an iPad Pro that will run Resolve. It doesn't have an M1 chip, so some of the features on there don't work. It's the last non-M1 iPad Pro that they made. So it is a nice iPad Pro. I've had no real reason to upgrade it. I don't care to use Final Cut or Resolve on it necessarily. But it does have Resolve. So I could use this with the iPad to color correct stuff on the iPad if I wanted to do that. But I saw someone who was testing this out at NAB, and he was like, I will put my iPad here and put my scopes on the iPad. So my MacBook Air will only do one external monitor. And but it will also do sidecar to an iPad. So then I can get 3 monitors: the iPad, the built-in laptop screen, and the external monitor. And so I can do the same thing. I can have an iPad down here as a third monitor and put my scopes on it or whatever. So that's pretty cool, right? So yeah, so I'm excited to get into this. Let's see what else is in the box. Welcome. A little pamphlet here for getting started. Way to download the online instruction manual. As always, a Blackmagic design sticker for your gear. I have a bunch of those already. And then a free download for Davinci Resolve, which of course Davinci Resolve is free anyway. The studio version is not. I have the studio version through my camera, and I don't think this is for the studio version. So I guess this doesn't come with the studio version, which is interesting, but I suppose makes sense. And then it looks like just one cable in the box, and it's USB-C to USB-C. So I will probably swap like I have here for my keyboard, and I'll probably just keep it plugged in USB. That way it'll stay charged. Getting tons of dropouts with OBS. So again, I don't know what that's looking like on your end, but I apologize if you feel like you're missing out on anything. This is, after all, riveting content.